Hello and welcome back to Where Are All My Friends? This episode is quite the honor for me to have done because it is with somebody that I consider to be a real legend in both the music and podcasting space, and that is Shane Told from Silverstein and Lead Singer Syndrome. I really respect what he does, both in music and podcasting. He started Lead Singer Syndrome in 2015. And if you think about that, yes, podcasts have been around for longer than that, but were you listening to podcasts in 2015? Because I wasn't. And that's something that we talk about in this episode is Silverstein, Shane himself, Lead Singer Syndrome, have all kind of been ahead of the curve in a certain way while staying very true to his and their roots as a collective. And it was really fun to talk to him about exactly that. The first half of this episode, we talk all about the band and how they've stayed authentic and how they've always embraced technology and what's to come. And that was really fun and interesting. We also had a little moment where I got to ask like the very specific times that the band was coming up that he really remembers. And then we pivot into the podcast and I get to kind of nerd out and ask him a lot of questions about that. And I'm a really big fan of that, making this podcast for about 2 years now and learning the work that goes into it and seeing what he's been doing. It's been a big inspiration. And it's definitely been a podcast that I've looked to as an example of what sets the bar of music interview podcasts in the space. So it was a real honor to talk to him. I learned so much. He's such a rad, humble dude. And for all those reasons, it made for an incredibly good episode. So with that, let's get right into it. Where are all my friends? This is a really cool one because it is with Shane Told, who is the host of a podcast that in my opinion, started a whole wave of podcasts in music in a very specific space, but like really just a whole wave of podcasts in music. So I'm very honored right now. Like I feel like I'm sitting down talking to the OG of music podcasts, and that's really cool that you were down to join.
Well, thank you. You didn't even bring up my band yet, so that's cool.
Yeah, he's also in Silverstein.
I'm more known for I'm more known for being a podcast host than a lead singer at this point. And honestly, I feel like I've done a lot more podcasting than singing over the past year and a half. So hey, it's all good.
Yeah,
thanks for having me, man.
Dude, that is funny too, because obviously Silverstein is a very well-established band and you've been at it. I think the band put out music in 2000. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, 20 years. 21 years actually is our first year. Is this year, 21 years. It's crazy.
Holy crap. And backstory too, like a couple of years ago when I was managing Capstan, you guys were kind enough to take them out on a huge tour. I've seen you firsthand as a band perform live and like the business and the way you take care of people. So that's not to say like I have so much respect for Silverstein, but I'm really fascinated in you as a podcast host. That is a big piece of it. But also, as I was thinking about this before we started, I was like, you must really love what you do because you've been first to so many things and you haven't stopped. Like so many people will be like first on a wave or on this and a that and have success and then kind of fade out, whatever. But like, you started Lead Singer Syndrome in 2015, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
The first episode is you with Caleb from Beartooth and you're recording at Warped Tour 2015. You can like hear the little bus generator hum in the background and you're like,
yeah, I didn't know how to edit that out at that point. It's been a pretty wild ride, man. And, thinking about things that happened, whether it's 21 years ago, starting with the band or whether it's, 6 years ago with this start of this podcast, it all doesn't feel very long ago. It's weird, like I don't feel that old. I feel like a lot of shit's happened, but I really don't feel, like I have a pretty good memory for where I was at. So I think it's pretty easy for me to reflect back. So yeah, man, ask me anything about that stuff. But I will say this, I was never first to anything. I definitely had my own influences too, whether it was being, a lot of people want to say, oh, he's the first guy to do both the singing and the screaming. It's like, no, I wasn't the first. We were one of the more popular bands doing it at the time. And in terms of me interviewing prominent, members of our music scene, there were plenty of podcasts doing that before as well. But I will take some credit in leveling some things up.
Yeah.
And I appreciate you recognizing me for that. And yeah, man, it's been a wild ride, and I've really enjoyed it. And you mentioned the thing about never stopping. I don't think I have the capability to stop. I think I start something, and it's just, this is what I do now, and I just do it. And I think it's important, maybe for my own brain, just to kind of keep up with it and not let myself down. And dude, believe me, there are weeks when like I do not want to edit a podcast. I do not feel like it, and I just say I got to do it. Like people are relying on me, and of course, if I'm late or I forget one week or I have to postpone a week or something, which has happened in 6 years, I hear about it.
Yeah.
They let me have it, so I know I have people that care and listen to what I do, and that means a lot too. I have that support.
I love that mentality. Like, you just said that so well. And I feel you on that. Like, once you commit to something, like, not doing it isn't an option. Like, you're just like, all right, I'm in this now. This is what I do. But like, people don't realize, like, to me, I've timed it. And at least in the early days, like an all in start to finish, record, edit, get it all ready, solid 10 hours.
Yeah.
I mean, it's time, depending on how much you cut up and clips and all of that. But there's a lot that goes into it. And to do that every week for years and years and years becomes something in your life that you really have to carve out time for and you really have to care about. But one thing you said is you were very humble to be like, I'm not first in this. But I think like whatever it has been in your career and with where you've been at, maybe you're not first, but you've been in a position where you can make things more widely known. So like what were the early influences? Like, if you admit that you weren't first, what were you seeing? Like, before you started Lead Singer Syndrome, before Silverstein, or before trying specific singing methods, what were you seeing where you're like, yo, this is it? Like, where were you finding those influences?
Well, I grew up in Oakville, Ontario, suburb of Toronto, and we had a really awesome music scene here. I say had because, it's kind of everywhere, where like the local music scene is just not the same anymore. Bands are local bands, but they're also on the internet. So you don't have the like cool little pockets of music and pockets of sound, and back then in the early 2000s, there really were pockets of sound. Like, you heard a band and you were like, yeah, this sounds like a band from Long Island, New York, or a band from New Jersey, or
Chicago,
something like that.
Cool scene.
Yeah, sure. So many different sounds within, and in Toronto we definitely had one. There were bands coming up with us. Our peers were Alexis on Fire and Boys Night Out and Monine. They're all from let's call it an hour radius here in the western suburbs of Toronto, maybe even smaller than an hour actually. And pretty much all of us really looked up to this band called Grade, from Burlington, Ontario. They were actually on Victory Records. They put out a couple albums on Victory, and they were, I would say, for me, they're the first band I heard that was, a post-hardcore band that did singing and screaming. And we got compared to them a lot, and it made sense because they were our biggest influence. I mean, they were at least my biggest influence. And I saw their local popularity, and I knew that they'd done, touring and everything. And I just kind of thought to myself, everyone's always talking about how, this dude can't sing, or like the vocals aren't good or whatever. And, I just kind of decided at that point, well, I want to do what Grade does, but we're going to spend a little more time on the vocals. And it wasn't that it wasn't like that he couldn't sing. And I love his voice, but this is like back in the day, when in the late 90s and stuff, where people are recording and like, okay, go in the studio, like, you have a day, so sing the song like 3 times and we'll edit it together, and that's the best it's going to be.
Yeah.
And now, like, I'll spend I'll spend like an entire 8-hour session on one song, not even just lead vocals. So like, there's a lot of meticulous work that goes into it. And I think that was something we were really conscious of, was just really making our recordings the best they could be.
Yeah.
And of course they're not that good. And we weren't the only band thinking about this, but in terms of like comparing it to kind of what came before, we were trying to say, okay, like, I'm a fan of this band. What do I wish? Well, I wish the vocals were recorded a little better. Like, what if the singing sounded more like Newfound Glory and less like Bane? That was kind of more the approach that we sort of took. And I think that was a big part of the start of our band. And people were really surprised when they would go see us live and I was singing and I was screaming, and it wasn't like, oh, the guitar player does the clean vocals or the guitar player does the screaming. Like, I did both things. And that, I think, was, people were like, oh shit, like, I didn't think this was possible, because Atreyu has the drummer does the singing, or whatever other bands were popular at the time. So, but we weren't the first band in our scene. Like, there were plenty of them doing that. And Grade was obviously the biggest one.
It's cool though that your approach to it was taking things that you were inspired by and then just finding your way to make the best version of it. Like, not being like, yo, we're better than this, but being like, this is so sick. How do we take this and just like dial it? And as you were saying that, I was kind of thinking about what I've seen firsthand with the band, and like thinking about Paul and like the attention to detail that goes into so much of what Silverstein is. And that's crazy to hear you kind of explain that even at the very beginning of the band. Like, it seems like that's been a through line of the entire band, huh?
I guess so. I think in the early days, though, we were not as serious and not as professional, and we certainly didn't know anything about how the music industry worked. Yeah. We were still 5 dudes from Canada, like, getting in our van, just whatever, hoping there would be 50 kids at the show.
Yeah.
That was literally what it was. We didn't know all the stuff now that like Paul works on and everything. And I got to give him a lot of credit for, he's our drummer and our manager, and he's like the smartest dude ever. But I will say back then he was like always ahead of the curve a little bit. I remember this is probably 2000, and we'd written maybe like 4 or 5 songs, and I don't even know if we'd played a show yet. And Paul built us a website.
No way.
I was like fucking laughing my head off. Like, what the hell do we need a website for? Like, bands don't have website. Like, maybe Metallica has a website. What do we need a website for?
Yeah, like maybe you had a MySpace header. Like, you had a fancy MySpace header or something.
This is way before social media. But I'll get to that.
Oh,
I mean, this was like I'm talking about like Coca-Cola maybe had a website, but like not even everything had websites, right? So I was like, what do we need a website for? And he built one because he was, nerdy like that, and still is. And then, and especially like punk bands and stuff, like, it wasn't a thing really. And then when later on, I remember Friendster came out, which was a precursor to MySpace, and we had a band profile on there, and I was like, what is this shit? Like, and we were like we were maybe the first band on Friendster. And then when MySpace came out, Paul himself was one of the first people on MySpace, and MySpace was so, primitive and clunky. I'm sure as people remember how bad the interface and technology was, that because Paul was one of the first people to sign up, he was always at the top of everybody's like friend list.
Yeah, it went off of the date you joined.
Yeah, so he started getting like pretty popular on MySpace like right away. Him and like Jeffree Star and like people like that.
I didn't realize he was a part of that. That's amazing.
Yeah, he totally was. And he had so many MySpace friends. And then pretty much he had the idea, well, let's put a band profile up there. And we were one of the first bands on MySpace. Therefore, we're at the top of everybody's friends list. Like, everyone's seeing us when they're on MySpace. And, we were called a MySpace band because of that.
I
But,
didn't even realize that, because I remember that era that you're talking about, like Hollywood Undead and Jeffree Star. And what was that one girl, Tila Tequila?
Yeah.
Like there was like these names that were just like burned into your brain because they always came to the top, but I didn't realize that Silverstein was one of those.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if we were the top of the top. And I mean, I say we were one of the first bands, in like, maybe we were like in the first 1,000 band, something like that.
I would say probably higher than that, but I feel you.
Yeah, I don't know. But like we already had a little bit of, notoriety, being that we were on Victory Records, and, we had probably sold a couple 100,000 records. So, we weren't only a MySpace band, and it kind of pissed us off, I think, for a minute when we were compared to someone like Hollywood Undead, who at the time literally was a MySpace band. Like they didn't even play shows or have a record out yet. But but to your point and what you were saying, to kind of circle back, yes, we were always like, okay, what's the new thing? Like, what can we do to grow? Or like, let's not be dinosaurs. Let's continue to push ourselves forward. Whether it's building a website in 2000, whether it's embracing MySpace, or like even with some of the live stream stuff we did this year. We were trying to find the best way, and find a way, honestly, just to continue to be relevant and continue to push forward and make smart decisions. That's just been our mentality.
Well, and that's something that I respect about the band so much, because the side of that isn't so rad is the people that try to ride every wave and trend, and they aren't authentic to who they are. Because the through line with Silverstein is the music has it's evolved, but you've stayed true to who you are. And there's so many people that like turned their backs to their roots and things like that. And I think probably a reason why you have the ridiculous fan base that you have is you've never tried to be something you're not. Like you've never done like the full, like, we're a pop band now, and like done the like radio album, or maybe I'm not aware, but I don't think you have. So as much as you've pushed boundaries and you've stayed with the times, you've also done that in a way where it doesn't feel like you're trying to be something you're not. You're just like, cool, this is the product, and we're not old and dated.
Yeah. And I'm glad that you've noticed that. And it is something that's important to us. Once in a while, someone will have an idea in the band, and I'll just reply with the Steve Buscemi meme with the skateboard, like, hello, fellow kids. Like there's always a certain amount of like, all right, what we can push forward, and we can like do things that are current, that like, but we also like need to realize when we're a little bit out of bounds. You know what I mean? If that makes any sense, because there is a certain amount of like, we've set certain precedents for who we are, what we do, what we say, I don't know, how we dress, whatever. Like we've never cared too much about the image and stuff. So if all of a sudden we really started caring about it, it would be a little bit like false, even if it's important. So it's a blessing and a curse that we have done things a certain way. But at the same time, one thing I'm really happy about is we've always been very ourselves. And, you look back at some of the old pictures, like, sure, everybody had a little bit of emo swoop in their hair.
Oh,
but we never took it as far as like other bands, like our fashion and our old photos are not as embarrassing as other bands. You don't have any
members with the loose lips, sink ships chest tattoo and the deep V? You don't?
I don't, not too much. Like, of course, like that stuff always spilled over a little bit into everybody. And definitely the haircuts were there for a lot of us. But like, hey, I mean, Josh has never wore skinny jeans in his life. Okay.
Wow. So that says a lot.
So we do have those, differences, I feel, but musically, talking about music, it was really, really interesting. Like, I think it was around 2007, 2008, in that window, maybe even a little bit earlier, when there was a lot of talk of the death of screamo and the death of kind of screaming in our scene, in our music. And I was like really conflicted about this because so many bands were talking about it, like, oh, the new Census Fail record, it's like gonna have like no screaming, or this other record, there's like no screaming on this because the band, is gonna try to get on the radio, and people can't scream on the radio. Like, this was a really kind of a big conversation, and my take was like no, like the screaming is what people like about our band, and we have existing fans that are coming out, to our shows in droves and buying our records. Like, why do we want to throw that all away, hoping that MTV will play our video, or some radio station will play it, and then we got to do these shitty radio festivals? Like, I didn't want any part of that. So we kind of stuck to our sound for the most part. And what was kind of cool about that was, at the same time we were sticking to our guns and a few bands were really, really going the pop route, there was a whole new movement with Rise Records and Devil Wears Prada starting to blow up in around 2008, and Day to Remember, of course. And these were bands like, no, we're playing like heavy breakdowns, and we're tuning lower, and we're screaming, and it's way more metal influenced, and like, hey, this is what's popular now. And I'm glad we made that decision, and we didn't try to make the like super poppy, like we're gonna drop the screaming record, because that wasn't true to us. And I think I was right that the fans did want the aggressive stuff. And 2009 we put out Shipwreck in the Sand, which was our heaviest album, and people really liked it, and that kind of continued our path to where we are now.
Right. Yeah, it's really cool to hear that, because I think of all bands, like, you just said that so well, but understanding how you took that approach and how you looked at everything and just staying legitimately authentic to yourselves and your fan base, I think is so cool, because here you are now with a career that has lasted through all of these trends and everything. And you still have people showing, like, literally firsthand, I have seen it city upon city. You still have people showing up like crazy, and you've still done such a great job keeping that going. And then I listen to your music, and it's still this cool evolution where, of course, you're building on it, and production evolves and different things evolve, but it all still feels similar. And even like Afterglow, right? That came out in 17, 18?
Yeah, 2017. Yeah.
Dude, and like that's one of your top songs on Spotify now. So it's like, it's not like you just got pigeonholed into old versions of your music being popular. Like, the evolution has worked. And to me,
I think last I checked, two of our our Spotify top 5, I think 2 of the songs are from our 2020 album too. So I mean, we've just, and that's a separate conversation I'd love to talk to you about too. But I think before we get to that, it is really difficult to know, as a band that's been doing it as long as we have, what is a good idea to, and what's like really important to do moving forward, and what is like something we need to ignore.
Yes.
With whether it's a trend or whether it's a way of doing things or whatever, right? And that can be tricky. I think our last record, for example, we recorded the drums last. And that's a thing that bands are doing now. A lot of bands are starting to record drums last because of the way that records are put together and stuff. And I tell you, man, like, even 3-4 years ago, I would have been like, no, absolutely not. That's so stupid. What? No. And it's something we tried, and it worked really well. And okay, now we're going to do our drums last, which, has actually really helped with some of the way we put together our albums and our production. So that's like, I know that's a kind of a highly technical thing.
No, but that is
there's
a cool
a lot
example
of examples of that where it's like, okay, is this a good idea? Is this stupid? Is this going to help us? Or whatever in all aspects of our band. So
I have one other Silverstein question, and then I want to ask you some podcast stuff too.
Yeah, anything you want, man.
I had a couple of the dudes from Under Oath on, and I had this question for them, and the answer to me was so cool, because I think bands that have been around and had their like real times and come ups, this one, it just hits different. So the question is like, did you have a moment, a specific moment where you've been doing the band thing and obviously you believe in it, you got your brothers on the road and it's going, but did you have like one specific show or moment where you're looking at a crowd or something happens and you're like, oh shit, we did it. Like this is real. We
Right.
can live off this, or like, oh my God.
Yeah. And shout out to Under Oath.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny you asked them that question because I remember their emergence, you know, and us
Whoa.
together in it was to 2004 Warp Tour on the Smart Punk stage. And so it would have been Under Oath and us, and From First to Last, and The Underminded was a band, you know, Nick from Sleeping with Sirens, his band, and there was this sort of scene happening, you know, that we weren't accepted onto the mainstream Warp Tour bands with like all the punk rock shit, which I love. I'm wearing a fucking Bad Religion shirt. Like I love that stuff, but we were not accepted. We were looked at like this. We were looked at as a trend, you know?
Oh, wow.
And we were looked at as like, okay, they don't belong here, but like right now this is maybe popular and it's all just haircuts and skinny jeans or whatever, right?
Whoa.
But I remember, man, like I think it was the Tampa Warp Tour, St. Pete's, and that's Under Oath's hometown.
That's my hometown
So-
too. That was like the Warp
okay.
Tour I grew up going to. I know that exact
Yeah.
venue.
Oh, it's
thought
beautiful. It's
that every Warp Tour was like on the water, like just because I never had thought of it. I was like, oh yeah, wow, that's cool.
Oh man, so I forget the order of bands, but it was, man, there was other bands too. Emery maybe there were a bunch of bands of our moment. So we just packed it out over there, and it was going to be like, I think it was From First to Last, Silverstein, and Under Oath, and Under Oath was playing last because it was their hometown, and like so the crowd just started building, and like we packed up. It was like the craziest show ever. Then Under Oath's going on, and this like Chasing Safeties, I think just maybe not out yet, but like the singles have come out, or the record got leaked actually on Napster. Fuck. So everyone's like so excited. And man, like all of a sudden, like there's this more people than I've ever seen. People are like falling into the water, like off the edge of the cliff. Like we knew. So I don't know if that was their answer. That should have been their answer for when they knew they made it. But right after that, we became really close friends with them, and we went to Europe together for the first time. Both the first time us and them had ever left North America. We went over and we shared a bus together in 2005, and so those are my homies, man. Some of my best music friends. But anyway, sorry, that was a side story. But to answer your question, I think like pretty long into the band, I still was thinking about like, what am I going to do with my life?
Wow.
Like even as far back as fall 2004, which is, we were halfway through our first album cycle, and we were on tour with Census Fail, and we were playing like, House of Blues size venues, direct support. I was still doing like university correspondence classes in the van on tour.
What?
Because we honestly thought we were going to be like all my favorite hardcore bands, which was like you put 2 records out and you break up. Whether it was like Lifetime or Gorilla Biscuits or whoever, like that was what you did. And you had a little like fun for 3-4 years, and then it was like unsustainable, and you go back to, for me, I would have gone back to school. I was taking science and would have probably worked in that field, and that was like what I just assumed would happen. And honestly, man, I felt that pretty much all the way through 2003 and 2004, and then 2005 when Discovering the Waterfront came out, and I remember it sold like 30,000 copies the first week, and it charted like way up in the charts. And that, like, to me, that was the moment when it hit me that this was real. And like, sure, we'd played some big shows and we'd done like a decent, I think we'd headlined a couple House of Blues kind of things, not sold out yet. But when that record did that, I'll never forget where I was. We were on the release tour. I was in the basement of actually, I'll never forget where I was. I remember the room I was, but what city it was in.
Every
I feel
venue
like
just becomes the same. It's just like
I feel like it was the clubhouse in Phoenix, actually, when we got in the news. And I remember just like reading it on like my primitive phone, or maybe it was my laptop. I don't even know if I had a phone yet at that point. And like seeing the number and whatever, and like looking around the room to like celebrate. And there was just one dude from like Evergreen Terrace who we supported, and they didn't like us very much. And I think I just said to him like, dude, we just got our numbers back and like whatever. And he was like, cool. And I was like, sorry, like I don't know. There's like nobody here to tell except you, and it's just like the two of us in like the green room. At least that's how I remember it. He must have thought I was such a pompous,
give less
like
of a
bragging.
Shit. He's like, cool, dude.
Yeah, I mean, I won't get into that, but yeah, and I just remember like seeing that, and it was not real. Because sure, like we'd heard of other bands, having big first week numbers or whatever, but that like I didn't put our band in the same world yet. I should have, but like it's
right,
when it's your own thing,
second.
it just felt different. And then when that happened, it was sort of like, oh, I think we're gonna be doing more than 2 albums now. And yeah, and that pretty much was for me. That was the moment right there.
That's so sick. That's such a good moment. I'm so glad you have that, like down to like that feeling of sitting in the room and looking at the numbers, and like you don't like have anyone to talk to. You're like, oh shit, you like have to say it out loud, and you're like, you. That's so sick. And also, when you said the thing with Under Oath, you're like, they should have said that. I believe it wasn't St. Pete that they said, and I feel like they should have, but it was Atlanta on that same tour, and they broke a stage.
Okay.
Or Tim's was they broke a stage, and then Aaron's was Boston when I think The Used or another huge band was playing, and people showed up to them instead, and they were like, oh. And you said like that water thing, and I'm like, that's so funny because listeners that don't know that venue, it takes a lot of people to get to the water. Like it's a park side along the water, but you've got hundreds of feet of grass and sidewalk with this before you're getting there. So that says that there's a ton of people. So all of that is really crazy for me. As you're explaining all of these moments, like I remember that album coming out, like I remember that Silverstein album, and I remember my friend group playing it. So like hearing you explain it and those Warped Tours and everything, I'm just like, it's so sick.
I know. Yeah, it's a crazy the era of the scene, and thinking back to it and how we didn't obviously, like I really believed in it, and I saw a band like Under Oath was just, they were so fucking good, man. Like the energy that they had, and they went crazy every show, and there were bands like that I just were like, okay, we're onto something here. Like this scene is not going anywhere.
Yeah, this
isn't going to be some flash in the pan thing that like in a few years nobody's going to care about. I saw the substance of it, and I was a fan of the bands that were talking shit and weren't believing in it. And from their perspective, I understood as well, like why they didn't get it, but we believed in it, and we created something pretty special.
Dude, I genuinely feel that, and it's so cool to hear you explain how that all happened. And I can also imagine that with what you've explained in the story, in those eras and while bands like Under Oath and all these other bands you're touring with, like that was probably such a crazy energy to feed off of, like being on those tours and seeing these bands that inspire you, and then being able to be the front man of a band and translate that energy. Like that was probably so insane. Not to say that goes away, but just that specific era, hearing you explain, I'm just like, what?
Yeah, it totally. But it's also weird because we still were like young, dumb kids.
Yeah,
like we didn't really understand the weight of what we were doing. Like we were just up there having fun, you know. And it was it wasn't really like ever looked at as this is like a professional band and like this is our like the word that got thrown around that I thought was hilarious was like career. I was like, career. Like Tom Cruise has a career. I don't have a career. I'm just a dude like driving a van, losing my voice, like hoping, to like win $1 off my bandmate in CeeLo in the van so I can buy a McDonald's sundae at the next stop. Like this was like, dollar menu millionaires. It was like we had no money, we had nothing. It wasn't about that. It was just about holy shit, like these people know our music.
Yeah,
like,
dude.
This people went to this like person went to a store and bought a CD and now they know our music. Like that to me was just like crazy. Like I'm like, we're in fucking, I don't know, name a state. We're in Oklahoma. How do people know us in Oklahoma?
Yeah.
Or wherever. It was just, that was really just crazy to us. And that took a long time to register. And I mean, once we went to Australia and we saw people singing our songs there, it was like, oh shit, okay. Like this is like a real thing too. That was another oh shit moment, I think.
Just being that far away from home and people still knowing it, you're like, all right, I guess we did something that impacted people.
Exactly. But like really, it took a long time for all that stuff to kind of register like it would register with me now.
Yeah.
And I think, I don't know if younger bands have the same feeling because everything's like out there.
Yeah,
I don't know, but it's different
much
now.
more direct success, or like you see it more tangibly, and like that's another thing is like people are buying albums. Like you guys were so first on having a website and a MySpace and all that. And it's not like you couldn't talk to people online, but that era that you're painting, like I totally get it because I started touring in 2008, and like it was this crazy feeling where you'd go to a city and it would be far from home. And you show up and there's like a line or there's people at this show and they like know the songs or they know your name or something like that. And you're like, what, who put you up to this? Am I on Punk'd? Like it just like wasn't the same thing. So that's really crazy to hear that from your view and like carrying over all the way across the world. Like, damn.
Yeah, man.
I want like, there's so much to talk about because you've done so much in Silverstein, like, dude, there's so much, but I kind of want to pivot to podcast you now if you're down.
Sure, man. Sure.
Because that's a whole other cool thing. And again, this whole conversation kind of like not being first, but doing things authentically and like keeping up with the times. 2015 wasn't exactly like the everyone's talking about podcasting and did you hear how much money Joe Rogan got paid to do something exclusive? Like, right. I feel like 2000, I was on that Warped Tour and I don't remember seeing any podcasts being recorded behind buses or anything like that. But 2015 me, like, yes, I knew what podcasts were, but what did I like? I thought maybe you could like learn like languages off of them or like you could hear NPR shows aired again if you wanted to. Like it was not the same as what it is now. So where did that inspiration come from?
Well, I remember when podcasts came out and I want to say I was listening to podcasts as early as like maybe 2008.
Oh, wow.
I want to say, cause like iPods, I got my first iPod in 2004.
Yeah.
I remember that.
The one with the buttons, it was white and it had the orange buttons that lit up.
No, the generation right after that.
Oh, okay.
I had the first one that had the click wheel.
The click wheel.
Yeah, the click wheel. But yeah, before that they had the like buttons in a row. That was the really super primitive ones. But yeah, I had I think it was a 40 gig. It was like 20 or 40 gig, and it was like, dude, it was like $900. Like, dude,
they were so expensive.
But it was like it was so funny too. Whenever these things come out, like I mean with the iPod for sure, but also I remember the first time I ever saw a Sidekick.
Oh my
And
God.
my thinking is like, it can never get better than this.
It was
This is
pinnacle, dude.
amazing.
The Motorola Razr and the Sidekick. If you had one of those, it was like, welcome
had
to
both.
the friggin' future.
I know, man.
Holy.
But and I get so off topic. I'm sorry, but no, I mean, back in those days, like I was, you know, I had this fancy iPod, and I was like, what's this podcast thing? I don't know. So I started downloading them, and you know, you download it and you listen to it, and it was like, I was like, this is great because, you know, there's no internet everywhere, there's no streaming, and you know, let's say I'm away from home and I want to listen to something about like Toronto sports because I'm a big sports guy. Well, I can download this sports podcast from Toronto and I can listen to it when I'm in somewhere in the US where I can't actually listen to the radio, right? So that's kind of how I got into it with like through sports. But then, you know, there were a bunch of music podcasts, and I got to give credit to my friend Ray Harkins, who does the 100 Words or Less podcast.
You know what? Yeah,
that
shout
a long
out
time.
to him. He is very OG.
Oh yeah, and I mean, definitely he's an influence of mine for sure on the podcast side of things. But you know, really where it all stemmed from was I was hit up by, I think it was Substream magazine, and they wanted me and Buddy from Census Fail to do a feature where we interviewed each other for like some magazine cover or something. So I said, okay. So I was like, this will be fun because, you know, I know what a singer wants to be asked because I'm a singer. So I'll ask him like good questions, and hopefully he'll ask me good questions. So it was just through email. Like, we didn't speak, but you know, I emailed him the questions, and he hit me back with like, hey man, I like really enjoyed this. These are really great questions. Like, thank you. And for Buddy to like, Buddy's a bit of a, don't get me wrong, I think Buddy's a nice guy, but he's not super like upfront and warm in that way. At least at the time he wasn't.
He'll
so
say
for him
it
to
how
say
it
that,
is.
for him, exactly. But for him to say that in that way, I was like, oh well, he must have been really genuine with it. So it got me thinking, well, you know, I do all these like bad interviews with like people that, you know, no offense, not you.
How did you get your band name?
Exactly. And you know, I just sort of said like, man, what if I did something where I'm interviewing other lead singers? So originally, I was going to make it a YouTube channel.
Oh.
But then I quickly realized, well, that's a lot more work. First of all, I don't know how camera editing or video editing works because I've never done it. But audio editing, like, I'm a musician, so I know how to do that. And second of all, well, I don't always have to be in the same room as somebody, you know, when it's a video, if it's an audio interview. So somewhere along the way, somebody suggested a podcast would make a lot of sense. And I was like, yes, that's a great idea. So I somehow got in touch with a couple people that were starting this podcast network that was called Jabberjaw, and they sort of took me under their wing, and they told me, they taught me what an RSS feed is and all that shit, and I learned from them, and you know, they really held my hand through the beginnings of it.
Wow!
Shout out to Nick Bunda over there. He's not over there anymore, but he's still in the world, and he was instrumental in kind of, you know, me figuring it out. And you know, I think even, you know, from that, you brought up that first podcast I did with Caleb in the bandwagon on a day off on Warped Tour. Like, I think right away I just, obviously we're good friends and he had a lot to talk about, but right away I think that there's a certain magic in that conversation, and I've been able to convey that, you know, quite a few times, capture that quite a few times with some other people, and it's been a lot of fun, man. I made a lot of friends.
It's so special because there is this understanding and respect where if you as a musician are sitting down with another musician, there's just things that you are going to relate to more, and you can speak so personally to so many experiences. And it's just cool now. I think I looked at the iTunes feed, and granted, not all of them are interviews, but I think you're up to like 345 episodes or so.
Yeah, I think I just put out 283 number 283
for interviews.
So Yeah, 283 like official one-on-one lead singer interviews. Yeah, I do a
Right.
thing now. I've done it for actually it's the 1 year anniversary of a show we call New Noise, where
Yeah.
me and my friend Mike Howell, he's like a crazy new music guy. He knows every band, everything coming out, so he makes a top 5 every week. So that's something that's also on the podcast feed.
Right.
But in terms of like the traditional, one-on-one or one-on-two lead singer episodes,
Yeah.
I believe it's 283 was this week with Andrew Wells of Idola and Dance Gavin Dance. So, yeah, man, I've missed a few weeks here and there, but I've been doing this thing now. It's coming up on 6 years.
It's so nuts because through that, you look at the list of people that you've talked to and you've kind of transcended the scene in quotes. But like
Sure.
some
Yeah,
of the
absolutely.
artists that you've had on now, it's like it's really become a thing. And that to me, it's almost like the way that you think to Google something or the way that you kind of just assume like, oh, maybe like a YouTube video. You're like, oh, how does this compressor work? Like, there's a YouTube video. Now in my head, I kind of just know that there's a lead singer syndrome with most bands that I pay attention to in that space, right? And then
Right,
beyond
right.
it. And it's kind of cool. Like it's become this staple, this platform, this rite of initiation of like, have you done your lead singer syndrome interview yet? And like I remember when like working with Capstan, like when Anthony did his first one with you, like that was a big deal. So not only do you
That's
have a
cool.
rapport and a dynamic with these artists that like you're gonna have a conversation that's different from someone else just because you have this understanding. That's a given. But now you've also created this platform and this ecosystem of like it's another rite of passage. And it's like this because it's so consistent, you kind of know your energy and like you're going to treat a guest well and you're going to ask good questions. So now as a listener, you kind of have this new search engine of like, oh, I want to hear from this person. Here's a perfect hour where I'm going to learn something that I haven't heard before. And I respect the fuck out of that. Like that to me is like the inspiration and what I want to do in podcasting as well is like, you just know this entity, you search lead singer syndrome and name and you see it and it's going to be a great hour of this person. And that's so fucking cool to me.
Well, thank you, man. That's really, really kind of you to say all that. And yeah, I mean, out of the gate, people were pretty excited about it. And that really helped pave the way. I think in the first 10 episodes, I had everybody from, Caleb to Pierre from Simple Plan to Adam from Taking Back Sunday. Some pretty big names. We brought up Under Oath. I think I had both the Under Oath dudes.
Yeah.
And that was right when they were coming back. So, I think right away I had some success and that really just helped keep it going. And I've always said, even from the very first days, like this isn't about a scene. Obviously I know what scene I'm a part of, but I'll talk to anybody that's a lead singer. That's the whole premise of the show. And like people from all different walks of life. And yeah, I've had everybody from, Dee Snider, Twisted Sister, to Dennis DeYoung of Styx.
Yeah, Lauv.
I had Love, and definitely in a different world. And I had Ace Frehley from Kiss for a bonus episode. I mean, I've had lots and lots of different people that I got to pick their brain, and I never take it for granted, man. Like I'm very aware that someone is taking time out of their very busy life to speak with me, and I always do my homework and I always do my research, and I'm always very appreciative, and I really try hard to do a good job. So
yeah, have you personally like over 6 years like talk about Silverstein always advancing and always trying to be at not the front, like you're not trying to be that band, but like you embrace the future and you have those things. Do you find that you've learned like a ton off of talking to people so consistently? Like that's been a pattern now where I think about things differently. Every time I interview somebody, I'm like, damn, like I feel like I get like one little nugget.
Right.
Do you feel that?
Oh yeah. 100%. I mean, I think what what it's done mostly is I start to realize that so many people are the same. And one of the most interesting tidbits about doing a show like Lead Singer Syndrome with Shane Told is that nobody considers himself a lead singer. Every single singer in a band was something else, and like could like someone like either left the band, couldn't sing, so they jumped in or whatever. But like every single person's like, well, I'm a drummer. It's like, no, motherfucker, you're a singer. Well, no, well, you know, I'm a drummer though. I'm a drummer first, and like now I guess I like sort of sing. I'm like, no, you're a singer, like, you know, or well, you know, I started playing guitar. It's like, you know, and it's the same story. Like, we started a band, and I was the only person in the room that could remotely carry a tune, so I started singing, and here I am, but I don't feel like a lead singer, and I feel like that is such an interesting thing, and I'm the same way. I'm a guitar player. Look how many fucking guitars I have behind me.
Yeah.
You know, I don't consider myself a lead singer, and I mean, even Pierre from Simple Plan is like episode like 2 or in the first 5. He said, "I'm not a lead singer." Direct quote. "I'm not a lead singer." It's like,
wow.
Yes, you are.
That's
yes,
so
you are,
funny,
and you're good. And so to me, like, that is such a interesting narrative that's come up over and over again. That's like sort of taught me that I'm not alone in feeling somewhat of, maybe not a feeling like a fraud, but I think many people that are professionals in different fields definitely feel that way. And it's made me more comfortable in my own skin. And I think, I'm sure a lot of people that have listened to the podcast have taken that away from it too, which I think is kind of important, you know.
I've felt a similar, so like mine obviously isn't just lead singers, but it's, you know, people in music, basically the through line being, if you've had a successful career doing something you love, like kind of that come up story, and mostly in music, but can be like entrepreneurial. And the through line that I've found is it's pretty much everyone that doesn't, it's kind of this feeling of like, I don't have it all figured out. Like, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's not like I had this master plan and I did this, this, and this. Like, it's this thing of like, well, I found something that I liked doing and then I kept doing it. But like, there is this very humble feeling of like, I'm still figuring it out kind of thing. Like, I don't have this whole thing master planned out.
I know, especially in the music industry. It's like so funny how few people really understand like how publishing works. Like, you know, I've been doing this for 21 years. Do I know every single thing there is to know about publishing? Hell no.
Right.
I learn something every month or whatever about that aspect of it, because there's so much out there. And I think like, yeah, there's so many people in our industry that like just truly don't have it figured out, that are doing it every day. And that's a very great way. I say great in the wrong way. A real way to kind of feel inferior or feel like maybe you're not good enough or you're not on the same level as other people. And yeah, man, the longer I learn, the more I realize that no one knows what the fuck they're doing.
But you can also flip that narrative and make it encouraging, right? Where you understand that and then you feel like less of an imposter, because you're like, okay, if everybody doesn't really know and they're figuring it out, then like I can come play ball and figure it out too. And I think that can be the encouraging flip side of that.
It's just amazing. I remember talking to, you brought up about a compressor and watching a YouTube video, and I was working on some shitty demo, and I'm not very good at recording, but, and I was trying to use like a de-esser on a vocal, and I'll use a de-esser on podcasts sometimes, so you don't get all the, from the that's what a de-esser does, literally what it says. So I hit up one of my producer friends, and I said, so yeah, like what's a good de-esser and like how do you set it or whatever, and I won't name names, but he's like, yeah, honestly, I don't use one. I've never used one. Can't really figure them out. Like they never work well for me. And I'm like, what? Like you are like, and that's like the epitome of like, you know, not everybody, even people in the top roles, don't always know everything or have it all figured out. But there's so many aspects to everything you do.
Because I ran into that, like, I didn't know anything. I had never opened a DAW before a podcast. So I was like, oh, here we go.
Yeah.
And I figured that every friend of mine in music was like a master producer. And I remember going to friends being like, okay, compression or like this, like basic things. And they'd be like, oh, like I have like CLA vocals, which is like a pretty common plugin, whatever. And like, I just kind of like, I turn it on and then I'm good.
Rockman Dry or Rockman. This is like the two presets I use. Yeah, exactly.
But like that is kind of encouraging because it's so easy to look at other people and idolize them and just be like, they must have it all figured out and they must have their master's degree and this and that if they're this successful. And it's like, man, I just click some buttons until it sounds good kind of thing.
I know.
And I think that's cool.
Yeah, it's weird, man. And but yeah, no, just talking about the podcast and everything, I think people know they can't bullshit me the same way they can maybe kind of like tiptoe around things they may not want to say.
Yeah.
Because they know that I can kind of give them the Larry David look, of like, like, they know that I can smell the bullshit. So they don't even try. And I think that ends up with maybe a more honest conversation with a lot of things, which I think maybe sets apart what I do from some other interviews and just the long form nature of a podcast. And I mean, we're talking for like almost an hour, that's just a lot more interesting things are going to come up when you talk to somebody for 60 minutes than when you talk to somebody for 15 minutes. It's just the way it is.
Yeah. Do you feel like, has there been like outside benefits or like something that I was thinking about listening to an episode and you were talking about like the tour coming back and you were able to be like, we're finally like, we're back at it. And you have this platform now where people that care about you, it's so brilliant because you can keep people up to date in so many things. Like, have you found the podcast to be like an extreme benefit to just your life as Shane and the band? And like, have you seen cool crossover by building this community?
There's been some crossover, for sure. Like once in a while, I'll have somebody, like come out and they'll be like, hey man, just like really like the podcast. And like, this is my first Silverstein show,
No
like,
way.
It's like, oh wow. Well, like I didn't really expect that to happen, that much, but like, I guess so. Yeah. I guess like some people do, maybe they listen, maybe they're really like a band I'm interviewing. So they listen to the interview and then they, like my personality or I'm talking about some interesting story with Silverstein. And they're like, well, I never really listened to Silverstein before. Like maybe I'll check them out. So that has definitely happened. And for sure, it's like a great way to kind of just say like, hey, by the way, my band's going on tour or whatever. Haven't had many of those in the last year and a half, but for sure, man, I think it's a really cool, it's been a really cool kind of side gig that's obviously maybe become a little bit more than just a side gig. But I mean, I'm so grateful that I've had it over the past year and a half of not being able to, tour full time. I'm thank my lucky stars that I started this thing in 2015 and I had, I have a great fan base and, shout out to all my sinners. That's what I call my listeners and my All Access Club supporters. And, without them, it would have probably been a very difficult last year and a half.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's so cool. And it's really, again, like for me kind of being the younger one in the space of like my podcast's been out for 2 years. I look to yours. It's like very inspiring because I'm like, damn, cool. Like there is enough of an audience there and you have built a community and like that, your Patreon platform and all of that. And like, you've kind of proven that the model is like, if you have these meaningful conversations and you provide enough value and put that out there, people will help you and support you. And I'm not at that spot where it's like, oh, I can fully live off of this, but it's like, and that's not really what it's about, but it's just cool that by doing something that you love and care about and putting something out like that, that can be there. Like, it's so cool and encouraging to see that.
Yeah, 100%. And that's the thing is there was never a goal. It was never a goal of mine to like make a bunch of money off this thing. I mean, it was really just, I thought it would be fun to sit down with my friends and like pick their brain and like give some of them a platform and talk about things that no one talks about.
Yeah.
You know, and there was never like I'm going to do all this stuff and make all this money and I'm going to be advertising for like, you know, freaking Coinbase or right. You know, whatever my latest sponsor is. And Coinbase is awesome. And if you want to use promo code LSS, you can get $5 in free Bitcoin.
Coinbase.com / who knows how many dollars in the next how many years.
Dude, they're saying Bitcoin could hit $100,000 by the end of the year. I don't know, but I got some Bitcoin.
I'm just saying, Coinbase, that $5, that's about to be $10. Let's go.
Hey, right? So no, but in all seriousness, man, I think obviously this is like evolved into this, and but there was never like this big grand scheme of whatever, and I think it was a good. It must have been a good 2 years before I like really saw a dime from this thing, and you know, and that's fine. You know, it was you know, it was never the purpose of it, and but I'm very grateful for that supplementary income right now, man. I'll be honest.
Yeah. No, it's really cool. It's really encouraging because again, I'm at that 2-year mark, and it's like the money and time you put in is so much more like than I mean, at least at my level, like the very small level of like Patreon support or anything like that. But it's like, I don't really view that as discouraging. I think when you get into the rhythm of this and you do it, it becomes something bigger than that. And it just becomes like, oh, wow, like I get to have this amazing conversation with someone like yourself every week and learn something new and then put that out and know that other people are listening and that's potentially helping other people in their careers and all that. And like, super fulfilling. And I would have to imagine you feel the exact same way because you've been doing it for 6 friggin' years.
Yeah, I do, man. And yeah, I just sick. I've really tried hard not to let myself get jaded and you know, just enjoy it the same way I enjoyed it from that very first conversation. And you know, next week talking to Phil from Whitechapel, like I'm excited about that one. There's so many great guests in the queue, and always some big guests that I'm working on. Like I got Jesse from Killswitch. He's gonna be joining me next week. Like, man, I got so many questions for that guy.
Yeah,
you know, like how long they've been doing it. Like one of the original metalcore bands, and then he left the band, and then he came back. Like, man, there's just so many. So I am like, I still feel just thinking about that. Like I cannot wait to start like doing my research and like writing my questions and you know, and preparing for that, because I still really am passionate about, you know, telling people stories.
Yeah, that's so cool you say that. Like I feel the same way as like, again, it's not just lead singers here, but any guest that I have on, I don't really care like following or where you came from or this or association, whatever. It's just like, do I genuinely fuck with your story? Like, am I genuinely excited? Because I have to sit here and talk and ask all these questions. But it's like so fun being genuinely interested in wanting to hear these stories because you're just like, yo, wait, but like, what about this? So the fact that you still have that is so cool. Are you at a point now where the name of the podcast is enough? Like, do you have trouble booking guests, or can you pretty consistently stack it?
No, I don't have any trouble. The trouble is reading and responding to all the emails that I get from publicists. And it's pretty crazy. Like I have people hitting me up all day, every day. So, you know, and the thing is like, I'm not just like trying to fill the podcast feed with like the biggest names I can find. I'm looking for a compelling story. And, you know, like even just a couple weeks ago, I had this band from Germany. They're called Blackout Problems. You probably never heard of them. They've never toured outside Germany. But like, I read about the band and what they like, their beliefs and where they come from and everything. And I was like, yeah, I really want to talk to this guy, and I really want to spread their music and word on the band. And the band's awesome. And like, that's fine. And could I have booked, I mean, way bigger artists that are going to get more clicks? Like, sure, I could have, but that's never been what it's about. It's always about finding a compelling story. And so many people have interesting, amazing journeys that have brought them to this point, and that's my job to talk about that. It's not my job to be like, all right, like let's get another band that's had a radio hit on here so that there's some name recognition, or like I've never looked up how many followers on social media somebody had before I booked them. That's never factored in, not even once, into the podcast. And in fact, I don't even care if they post about the podcast. I don't care. Yeah. If they do, sure, great. Get their fans to listen to it. It's fine. But that's not going to make or break me. And like, I mean, I don't do a ton of promotion, really. I put it up every week on my Instagram, and that's it. So, you know, I think the word of mouth is really important for spreading the podcast. And, you know, I probably could do more, but I'm kind of okay with where it is. And, you know, I don't need to like ram it down everybody's throat, because I don't expect someone to listen to 283 plus hours of me talking either, you know?
Right. Well, you're also building, it's just trust, right? Like when you have a product and you stay consistent like that, you just have a trust of like, okay, cool. I see that he posts whenever he does. You don't need to force it down anybody's throat. And then when they go and look and listen, they know that they're going to get a consistent, good product, and that is going to have values like that. And there's going to be that there. And I respect that so much. Like word of mouth is the thing. And I don't want to be the person that's just like, bunch of ads, now you're there, blah, blah, blah. Like, I think that you said that really, really well, of like, that's how it should be. Like the product should speak for itself, and you should trust that the host is going to have a meaningful conversation, and it's not just going to be a clickbait episode. And that's when you have a good, sustainable product. And again, that's kind of what I respect the most about what you've built.
Yeah. Thank you, man. No, thank you. And I think that's probably, if anything's held back the podcast, it's been that I don't market it all that well. And you talk about like clickbait. It's so funny, you know, you talk about you estimate 10 hours to, you know, put together the whole thing. And it's true, man. Like I just hired an editor actually, like less than a month ago, finally. Yeah. But doing it all by myself for 6 years, it's true, man. Like all the time you put in, from booking the guest to researching to actually doing the interview, and then you know, getting the files right and editing it and mixing it and mastering it, and then you go through all these steps and you upload it, and then I always get to the same point where I struggle, which is when I have to write the fucking description.
Dude,
I hate
fucking
description. The description. I never know what to say.
Shane totally is cool. Trust me. We're done.
Right? I hate the description. I spend all that time making everything perfect, and then I have to sum up an hour or more in like 3 sentences. So it's very difficult, and it's my least favorite part of the whole thing.
Do people even read them? I sometimes write that in the descriptions. Like I'll write like the first line or two, and then I'll be like, if you're still reading this, send me a comment. And I haven't gotten anything back. So I'm just saying.
Yeah. No, the way to do it is be like, free Bitcoin if you email this link. That's with subject line free Bitcoin, and then you'll see how many people actually read it.
Dude,
you got to do something like that.
I can't believe you say that though. That fucking description. It's so annoying.
I hate the description. I hate it. Yep.
I hate it. I too, massive shout out to Diana, but I too have just started working with an editor recently, and
I know Diana.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah.
Wait, are you thinking of Deanna Chapman though?
Yeah, I think so.
This is Diana. This is Diana Elise. Shout out Diana Elise. She is up next in anything photo and video out of Atlanta, but also about to be the country.
Sweet.
Huge shout out.
Nice.
But something else that I struggled with that she's so good at is picking the promo clip, because by the time I've gone through and edited it, I don't like I'm over like hearing my own voice and all that, but I just don't know what's actually interesting by the end of it. I'm just like, I wish that everybody would listen to the whole thing. So finding the clip, but she's so good because she's an external set of ears. So I'll be like, anything that you think is interesting, then run it. And she's so good
I don't even do promo clips. Like I think I've done them here and there. And when I used to be with Jabberjaw, they would sometimes like pull clips out and stuff. I'm sure it's very valuable I'm sure it's a great way to get people to listen to the show. I mean, it's like, I mean, people have been putting commercials on TV for how long?
Yeah.
Or movie trailers. I mean, it only makes sense. But yeah, I don't typically do them. So
But I
I
would
probably should.
also argue that you and I are playing a different game at this point. Like, because you were there first and you've built such a diehard audience, your word of mouth and that natural fan base is there. Whereas to me, I'm the new kid with way more saturation in the space. So I think that it's like I have to do these other things and I have to figure out these little finesses, and not finesses, but like I have to be like
Yeah.
really crafty with that because there's so much more noise and I'm the new kid.
Yeah, you could be right. I mean, I don't know. I think at the end of the day, it's free content. And at the end of the day, like, I'll do my best and that's it. I'm not gonna, let myself get too stressed out about it. Obviously I'm gonna take it seriously, but with the content, but like, I think at the end of the day, you got to realize like, hey, like, it's okay. It's going to be
Yes.
okay.
That's actually a great point because again, like I mean, use that 10 hours, give or take, whatever. But like, this is somebody that has a band. This is somebody that like has a whole other life and is giving these people a free piece of an hour that takes so much more on the back end. Like there can be some extra ums and you can
Right.
deal with the lack of a promo clip or the maybe not perfect this or that. And I agree with you. And sometimes I get lost in that. So thank you for that reminder too.
Exactly. Oh man, like trying to go through and cut out every or like, oh fuck, no way.
Insane. Well, dude, I feel like I've taken up just about enough of your time. I really appreciate you doing this because again, like you don't have to do this. Like you took an hour out of your day and I appreciate that so, so much. And you shared so much. And I don't know, I really respect what you're doing. So this means a lot. Thank you.
Well, yeah, Andrew. Well, thank you for all the kind words. And just a reminder to people like listening to this, if you like podcasts, if you like music and lead singers, make sure you don't sleep on my podcast, Lead Singer Syndrome, with 200 and what's the actual number? 200 and looking for 83. I was right. 283 different lead singers I've talked to. Well, I've talked to some of them more than once, but
yes,
let's say 250 different lead singers from all walks of life. So I encourage people to check it out.
Yeah, and I seriously back that. I was going to ask where everyone can find you, and you just did that so well. But it's for anyone listening, I would be surprised if you found this podcast and you haven't seen Lead Singer Syndrome. But if you haven't done the proper deep dive, I seriously encourage it because there's names that get lost in that like late 80s, mid hundreds where you're like, wait, what? You talked to this person? So like it's worth a proper feed scroll to really get in there.
Right. It's true. I even forget sometimes.
Dude.
I forget I had somebody talk to me about this conversation that I had. I won't name the band. I was like, wait, I never talked to this person. And they're like, yeah, this. I'm like, oh, and then it all came back to me. I was like, damn, I'm starting to forget. That's not good. But I was drinking heavily for a while there, so I'll just blame it on that.
Yeah. Well, it's also cool because like you'll have a conversation, like say it's a band in 2019 or something, and they were just releasing an album. Like it's fun to go back now after they've had more success or if things have changed, and you can like really kind of paint these pictures, and you have these like little timestamps of moments, and that's also cool.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely.
Yeah. So go listen to Lead Singer Syndrome if you haven't. It's really cool. Andrew, seal of approval. 2 thumbs up.
There we go.
There it is. Well, dude, seriously, thank you so much. This has been an absolute honor to do. So there it is, the Shane Told episode. This is a real honor to do. If you haven't already, do go check out Lead Singer Syndrome. It has been a big inspiration of mine. I really do respect him a lot as a musician and a podcaster, and it's so encouraging to see what he's built in the 6 years. And on that note, I want to be the guy that's going for 6 years and longer. And all those little things of supporting really, really do help. Telling your friends about the show, leaving reviews, subscribing wherever you're listening. If you want to go above and beyond, donating to the Patreon, all of these things help so much. And if you listen to this whole episode, you understand a little bit more just how much goes into this. Like about 10 hours per episode. Massive shout out now to my editor, Deanna. You should put a little clip of you. You should like swipe in your Instagram right here, or like something like cool cuts of you doing something right here, and just leave this in. But the amount of work that goes into this is insane. So for me to keep going, any support is so helpful. And I really appreciate it. So if you're here at the end and you don't mind doing that quick favor of telling a friend about it, sharing it on socials, anything, it helps so much. Let me know other guests you want to hear from. I'm always responding to DMs. I'm always trying to build more of a community and listen to any suggestions and feedback y'all have to make the best possible product. Thank you for listening. I'll be back next week.